guys for joining. So I think we have a lot of people from different backgrounds here. So some they are writing their final exams in this year. In the next few weeks they'll be writing their final exams, and then maybe some they are going to be writing their final exams next year. So we just have a lot of different people, but I think our main goal is the same. We all want to be chartered accountants despite stages that we are in. So we just want to learn from those who have gone before us, and they will also share their experience, how has been their experience and of this journey. At least these people, they recently completed their CTA, so at least I believe they're fresh knowledge for you guys to learn. So feel free to ask as many questions as you can, because these guys are fresh, right? So let me just introduce our first speaker for today. I hope the other ones are going to join, but for now I think we can just introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker for today is Thando. So Thando, she is going to share with us her experience. So Thando was in the July 2023 class, and she's from NAS. And Thando was the Zim 1, guys. So can you say congratulations to Thando? She came out the first position in the CTA full-time July 2023 class. So can we say congratulations, guys, to Thando? Yes, thank you so much. So she's going to tell us like how did she navigate it, and how did she manage to also have that exceptional performance. I believe it's possible, guys. I was also once there, and I'll also share my little experience. Anyway, it's very old, so we want like fresh experience. And then, as if it was not enough, so after passing here, CTA, Thando wrote ITC in this last sitting in June, and she also came number 5 in the top 10. And I think you guys also noticed like this year the pass rate was very low, and Thando managed to pass, so it's also another congratulations to her. So Thando, maybe can you just tell us, how was the CTA journey, and maybe did you ever felt like in your life, or maybe during CTA, or was just easy? And maybe you can then tell us like how did you manage, if you've never felt CTA, how did you manage to do that, and what made you pass in general? So Thando, you can take us through.
Right. Thank you, Brenda, for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. I think Brenda has introduced me. My name is Thando from NAS. Recently graduated from CA, my CTA, and I recently passed ITC. So, Brenda, one of the questions that you asked me was if I've ever failed before CTA. Well, before CTA, I think the lowest mark that I ever got should have been a 60%. However, when I started my CTA, we wrote a diagnostic test, and I think I had a 40-something for financial reporting. So I can say that like CTA was the first time when I experienced like failure, where I got a mark which was below 50%. And it didn't end there, like with the diagnostic test. Yes, I did improve maybe for our test 1 end of semester. However, for our test 2, I had a 49% for math. I know math is really difficult, so I was really shocked when I got 49%. So I think CTA was just one of the toughest courses that I've ever done, because that's where I got marks which were below 50. And for the very first time in my life, I was scared of failure. Even with the recent ITC that we got, I didn't think I'll make it, because the exams were just too difficult. I thought like getting a 50 would just be a miracle. So CTA and ITC, they are tough, but then it's doable with the right mindset. If you work hard, like be disciplined, make sure you put in the work, you can make it through. It's difficult, yes, but then nothing is impossible, right? If others have done it, you can also do it as well. So then, Brenda had asked me to share some of the tips and some of the materials I used during my journey. So for me, like, the journey was a bit difficult because I had to relocate from Bulawayo and move to Harare. But it was my first time staying in Harare, getting used to the noise, the traffic, and all that. So I think like maybe that was one of the biggest challenges that I faced when it came to CTA. And then in terms of studying and all that, there was a lot of information that I needed to know. Because I remember like for our first week, we did like 5 accounting standards. So there was too much work. So in terms of that, in terms of the workload, what I would advise maybe for those who are currently doing CTA and maybe those who are preparing for ITC in January, I'd advise that make sure that you start early. Don't let the work pile up. So make sure you always start early because it gives you enough room to go through the entire syllabus during the course of the semester, and then it also gives you room to have time for revision and consultation. So I think one of the things that helped me during my CTA journey was to start early. For example, if we're going on a break, on a school break, I'll make sure that I was studying during the break so that maybe when schools open, I'm one step ahead of the class. So I'd say you have to start early, don't let the work pile. And then another thing that helped me was to pre-read for the lectures. So with CTA, it's very important to manage your time. Make sure that you don't waste like any time. If you're attending a lecture or if it's a tutorial, make sure you gain something from that particular lecture or tutorial. So I maximized on the lectures and tutorials through pre-reading and attempting like the tutorial questions. So before I attend the lecture, maybe if it's 15, if it's 16, I'd make sure that I pre-read so that when they're now explaining like the concept in the lecture, I can easily understand what they're talking about. And then after the lecture, I'll give myself like 2 hours to at least attempt a tutorial question. So as I was attempting like the tutorial questions, I'll then refer back to the standards and the notes to make sure that I cement the principles in that particular topic. And then in terms of the modules, I had to then like rank my strengths and weaknesses, which module is a bit difficult for me, and then which one is easy. So for me, I felt like text was easy, so I wouldn't dedicate much time to it. Like I'll do it maybe once in a week. But then for other modules such as financial reporting and management accounting, I used to dedicate more time for them because the syllabus was quite long. But then I'll always try to strike a balance within like my modules because it doesn't make sense for one to get maybe 90% in text, but then you're getting 20% in FAR. So I'll always make sure that like I balance all my modules. I try to cover all topics for each and every module. And then in terms of studying, what I would do, like maybe let's say if it's 15, I was saying that I would pre-read. And then after pre-reading and maybe attempting tutorials, I'd make sure that during the weekend, I would then revise all those topics that we did during the week. So in revising those topics, maybe if I was doing IFRS 15, I would make sure that I do 3 or 4 questions related to IFRS 15 so that I get to like cover all areas which are related to IFRS 15 and then see how like they can like examine IFRS 15 within a particular question, within a particular paper. And then in terms of my study hours, I'll dedicate like 1 hour in the morning, maybe for pre-reading or attempting a tutorial question. And then after our lectures, I'll dedicate another like 2-3 hours. It was really 2 hours because our lectures would finish at 3. So I'll do 3 to 5. Maybe I'll be writing an assignment or like just revising something. And then I'll then go home, do another 2 hours, maybe from 8 to 10, and then like rest. So usually, like during weekdays, I would do like 5 hours of studying a day, and then on Saturdays, that's when like I would stretch maybe to 10 to 12 hours of studying because I'll be revising most of the times. And then my Sundays were for resting, so I don't do any study on Sunday. And then in terms of exam tips, I would say that make sure that you attempt questions, especially for those maybe who are writing in the next few weeks. I would say that if you are like now revising past exam papers and you're trying to work on your time management, make sure that you attempt those papers under exam conditions. Make sure that there's no noise. If you can afford, can get a hard copy instead of using a soft copy. For me, I would prefer like having hard copies for my revision papers, and then dedicate, I think now it's 4 hours. For us, it was 3 hours. So I'd dedicate 3 hours to writing that particular paper. So I'd act as if I'm in an exam already. So I'll say that when it comes to like maybe revising, preparing for your year-end exams, make sure that you attempt those question papers under exam conditions. If it's 4 hours, make sure that you have 4 hours dedicated to attempting that particular paper that you'll be revising. And then in terms of like maybe when you're not marking your script, you can ask someone else to like mark your script for you. Or if you're then doing it by yourself, make sure that you are honest. If you have zero for a particular question, make sure that you give yourself a 0. Don't cheat. You need to give yourself honest feedback because that's how you learn. It doesn't make sense for you to be getting high marks during the revision period, but then you fail your final exam. So make sure that you're honest when like you're marking your script and all that. And then also when you're revising, like another good exam technique will be to identify like the easy marks when it comes to a particular question, because I feel like in an exam setup, the majority of the marks will be maybe easy marks, and then we'll also be having like some difficult marks. So a good exam technique as a student that you need to know is like for this question or maybe for this particular topic, where are the easy marks? So you get that like through revising, because you see that maybe from the marking scheme, there'll be maybe principal marks and concept marks. So those are the easy marks that you need to target when you're answering questions. For example, maybe if you're doing a capital budgeting question, you know that initial outlay is an easy mark. And then when it comes to text, it's a concept mark. There's no need for me to calculate. But the fact that I've put text in my solution, I'm going to be given a concept mark for that. So always make sure that you identify the lower hanging fruits in a particular question. Because as they say in CTA, there are no marks for bravery. It doesn't make sense for you to get all the difficult marks and then you leave out the easy marks. So in whatever question that you're attempting, always ask yourself, where are the easy marks? And then you start by targeting those before shifting to difficult marks. And then also, as you are preparing for your finals, make sure that like you attempt all questions. Even if you don't know anything, just write 1 or 2 points. You never know, you might get a mark. A mark can make what? A difference, because you can turn a 49 into a 50. So, like, if possible, don't leave out any, like, blank pages. Try to attempt all questions. And then maybe also in terms of time management, always start with those easy questions, especially for FINAP. I've seen that maybe they'll give you, maybe let's say a cash flow question with 50 marks. and then you'll be having those other small standards having maybe 10, 8 marks. So a good exam technique would be like to start by attempting those easy topics before then moving on to like that question with 50 marks. Because a question with 50 marks, sometimes it can consume a lot of time. So make sure that you always rank your questions as you're preparing for your finals. When you're revising, make sure that you always start with the easiest and then you do the complex one at the end in order to save time. And also, like, another advice that I would give is, especially for financial reporting, I would say that do not neglect those small standards, your IS 38, IS 36, IS 37, because they like examining on that, especially for ITC. Like with the recent ITC that we wrote, the one which is 24% pass rate, like IS 36 was dominant for our financial reporting side. So you need to make sure that you don't only focus on those difficult standards, your IFRS 16, 15, your IFRS 2. Also make sure that at least you have a basic understanding of those simple standards, your IS 36, IS 40, and all that. And then make sure that you rest. It's very important that you rest, especially for those who are about to write. Don't go hard on yourself. Make sure that you get enough time to rest, especially when you're about to write. Don't read the day before your exam, because it doesn't make sense for you to be studying and then the following day you are going to write a 4-hour paper. Like, you get tired, and then sometimes you fall, not because you didn't know, but because you're tired and you couldn't think straight. So it's very important that you rest, work hard, but then also give yourself time to rest. And then maybe another key tip that I can give, especially for those who are about to prepare for the final years, the week before ITC, you can download like exam pronouncements from the site or website. So those pronouncements, they guide you on what is going to be like examined in the following ITC paper. So you can also use those as guidance as you are preparing for your finals and for your IT. And then in terms of study materials, I was also asked to share on the study materials that I used. For me, I prefer textbooks a lot. So for audit, I was using dynamic auditing and auditing notes for SA students. And then in terms of text, I think that's the only module where I used like the slides. I also used Tatenda. And then in terms of math, I used Paris Korea, Colin Trury, and some UCT notes. And then for FAR, I used descriptive accounting and group volume statements from my groups. So I think these are some of the things that I used during my CTA and ITC. Then in general, I'd say for me, I'm a Christian, so I believe in prayer. I would always pray before studying. When I'm going to write, I would always pray. I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for God. And also make sure that you have a good support system. Don't neglect your relationships. Continue maintaining them, but then also have boundaries, because you need to dedicate more time to CTA. Now also say that it doesn't hurt to sacrifice a few those few months to your CTA, because trust me, life after CTA is very boring, because you'll be having nothing to do. So make sure that you put in the hours for now. You're going to rest after your CTA. So I think that's it for my journey. I hope you learned something.
Thanks a lot, Thando. Thanks a lot. So do you guys have questions? So you can either type your question or you can unmute yourself and then you can ask Thando a question. But I like this. There are no marks for taking some brave steps, trying to start on the difficult things, forgetting the easy questions. Thanks a lot, Thando. And I think you also touched on the completeness, and then also having that assessment at your own personal level to say, okay, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and if you struggle a lot with math, put in more hours in math. Thanks a lot. I think it was very comprehensive for me. So you guys, if you have questions, so you can either type in chat or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. But then for now, we'll go to the next person. So I think from Thando's story, you can actually see that those people who are passing, they are just human as we are, and they really make some efforts, and above all, they still believe in their faith, and that's all that is needed for one to pass. So let's see what Tatenda has to say. So Tatenda was also part of the July 2023 class, so he is still very fresh and passed CTA, and also went on and write ITC the same year, and was also part of the ITC top 10. So Tatenda, with us here are people who want to write their CTA final exams, and then they'll be also writing their ITC in January. And then we also have some people who are in CTA level 1 who also want to understand your journey, and they can also learn something from you. So tell us, how was the CTA journey? Did you ever failed? How did you navigate the journey? What made you pass CTA, both in ITC?
Hi Brenda, and hi everyone. I hope you're okay. I'm doing well. Well, for me, I think the CTA journey was like one of the most challenging things in my academic life so far. Yeah, it's one of those courses where I got like low marks. I think my lowest was 35. I think it was in audit. I think that was my test 1. But yeah, I believe that for CTA, one of the most important things that you need to have is to work hard, because there's a lot of things that you need to be working on, and it seems like the time is not enough, but you have to show up somewhere somehow. So for me, CTA was very difficult, but what I then did was I felt like I had a lot of knowledge gaps, and I had to write down all the topics for all the modules, and I would tick off the topic that I would have completed to say I've done this. So I kind of had some courage to say that I now have enough knowledge on this topic because I've actually done it and I've ticked it off. Because one of the problems that I had was I would always come back to the same topic and say, you know what, I didn't understand. So that gave me like the courage to move on to the next topics. And then after that, I then started doing question papers, because for CTA now, what you're going to be solving in an exam is a scenario that will be presented to you. So you have to start working on question papers as soon as you can, or maybe it might not be a question paper as such, but to solve problems, because you're going to be presented with a problem before you, and you have to solve that problem. And for CTA, I think one of the things that make you fail is not necessarily because you don't know, but it's because you are not really familiar with answering technique. Like Thando was saying, you don't really have to go hard on yourself. You first have to collect the easy marks. Put the easy marks in the bag first, and then you move on to the difficult question. So for me, one of the problems that I had was I would always answer the question based on how they are presented on the question paper. But then I got to modify that, and I would always start with the easiest question and make sure that I'm done with that one, and then I move on to the difficult question. I think that's one of the ways I got to figure out CTA. And also I think time management was one of the most difficult things. So I would always practice question papers under exam conditions, like Thando was saying, because you're going to be presented with a problem and there's a limited time for you to be solving that problem. So you have to make sure that you can do whatever you are presented with within that time range. So I worked on my time management. Also, one of the problems I had was before I even finished reading the required, I would assume what I think they want me to respond to, not necessarily what they are saying. So I then told myself that I'm going to give myself like 5 minutes when I get the required. Do what I call the required analysis. Okay, for this required, what is it that they are expecting me to do? And how am I going to do it? So I kind of like planned my required before I even started working on it. So yeah, that was it. And also scenario comprehension. I think you need to understand the scenario that you are presented with before you even answer, because some of those business models, they are confusing, but I'm sure if you give yourself enough time to understand what exactly is going on, okay, so where's the problem, how is it like, and how am I going to solve it, you get a better understanding of that scenario. So as you read, you need to start asking yourself, okay, this is IS 36, okay, so probably there's an impairment somehow, okay, all right, let me, as I read through, I have to be looking for indicators of impairment, such that by the time you get to the required, you kind of have a picture of what it looks like before you even read it. And then for the study material that I used, for financial accounting, I used the descriptive accounting. That's the one that I used for financial accounting. And then for audit now, I realized that most of these scenarios that we get for auditing, they are similar. Somehow there's a similarity. Like the audit manager is always married to the engagement partner or something like that. So what I then told myself was, I'm going to go through the slides, and then after I've gone through the slides, I'll start doing question papers. Because as you do the question papers, you get to familiarize yourself with how you have to answer the questions. So for auditing, I did the slides and I started working on question papers as soon as I could. Then for text, I didn't have textbooks, like Thando was saying. I don't think there are much textbook for text. They do, but then I'm not sure if they help you at CTA level. But for you to get the background, yes, they can help you get the background, and you can get like the building blocks to your solution, because you now know how to deal with certain situations that you'll be presented with. But for text, I usually did question papers. I think for text and audit, I focused on question papers because well, for me, those were my easy modules. So I just went through the slides, and then I started working on question papers. Then for math, yeah, math was a bit challenging. I think for math, my math was the one that I had my lowest. I can't remember the marks, but I think for my test 2, that was the lowest that I had. I can't remember the mark though. So for math, what I did was I realized that I was failing math, and I don't know what happens with math at CTA. It's just difficult. Sometimes they ask you a question. I think it's because they don't have like guidelines. They can ask you about they're asking you about something else, and then that's how you respond, and that's how you fail. I don't know. But for math, what I then did was, like, I had the list of all the topics. I went through each and every one of them, and I ticked off the ones that I had done with, and then I also used the Endunamo slides. So I think for me, they really helped me because they kind of simplify most of the things, and you get to understand where they are coming from and where they are going. So for math, I think the Endunamo slides helped me a lot. And then I also started doing the question papers as soon as I could. But for math, I had to clear off all the topics first, and then I started doing the question papers. And And then for math, I think math and CTA, math and FINAC at your CTA level, those are the modules that you should put most of your time on, because they are really challenging, and also they have more marks than other modules. For example, I think for our ITC, our math was like 130 marks, and then the text will be like 60, and then the audit will be like 70, and then FINAC is 120, somewhere there. I don't know why they do that, but I feel like for CTA and ITC, most of the time, put your effort on FINAC and math. And then for me, I usually did like night studying. Sorry about that, someone was calling me. I usually did night studying. So I'd wake up, I would do pre-reading before I sleep. I would do my pre-reading, and then I wake up and go to school in the morning, and then in the afternoon after the lectures, I make sure that I clear off all my quizzes and my assignments. And then after that, I'll then go home. I think I'll eat around 6. Then after 6, I usually sleep at 10 or 11 or 12, depending with what I have to do. So I'll do my personal study from 6 to 12 or 11. And then I also did group discussions. I feel like they helped me to some extent, because I think it also now depends with the people that you study with, because sometimes it's like you are the one who are actually pushing people, but sometimes you really need someone who's going to be adding value to yourself. Like when you go for a group discussion, you should benefit something from that discussion. So yeah, the people that I used to study with, they helped me a lot, and I think that was one of the most important things, because if I didn't understand something, I'll then go back to my friends and say, guys, look at this. There's this situation that I'm looking at, but then these are the problems that I have. I felt like the answer was supposed to be like this, and they are saying this, and then we'll discuss about it, and then they'll shed some light on that particular issue. So if you're going to be doing group discussions, make sure that they also add value to you. And then what else? I think your mindset is also one of the most important things, especially during this journey. I got to a point where I felt like I wanted to give up, because when you're used to getting those good marks and then get a 35 or a 20, it hits you hard. So during that time, you need to have like strong support system and people that are going to motivate you to continue, because if you're not strong, probably suicidal thoughts will cross your mind, and the next thing you are not there. But it's not the end of the world. What CDA taught me was you have to move on quickly. You failed your test 1, yes. Where did you mess up? Okay, these are the issues that you're facing. And then find a way to solve those problems, and you move on. You have test 2 coming, so you have to be prepared. Make sure that whatever happens, you learn something from it and you move on. That's one of the things that I learned with my ITC. And whenever I went for an exam, make sure that the day before your exam, you don't work on any paper. I would just look at the solutions that are presented and say, okay, so for step 6 this is a solution, and then I just read it before I sleep. So I only read through the scenarios, the solutions. So I only read through the solutions the day before my exam. I didn't do anything. Make sure that you have enough rest, drink water, eat protein in the morning, and also pray. I'm sure like most of us here are Christians. One of the most important things is before you even start studying, make sure that you pray before you study. Make sure that you pray before your exam. And I had a friend of mine who used to pray during the exam. I don't know, maybe it helped, but I feel like when you're now in the exam, it's now time for you to be showing whatever skills that you have, and the Lord coming through to help you whenever you feel like there's need for help. So yeah, I think that was bit about my CTA and my ITC journey. I'm not sure if there are any questions or that I missed. Maybe I'll address to them before.
Yes, so thank you so much, Tatenda. Thank you so much. So you always see like these people who pass, they really put in some hours and they're being honest. Sometimes people be like, you know what, it just happened. But you see, like when you see people who are genuine, like Tatenda in Thando, and thank you guys so for your genuine to really say you really need to work hard. So it's not going to come on an easy platter, guys. So you really need to work very and extra hard and smart as well. So are there any questions from Tatenda and Thando? I'm not seeing any question. So I think I'll just assume that you guys understood everything. But if you have any questions, you can always send them to me and then I can always ask. At the end of the day, we wouldn't want to overwhelm these guys. The reason why I was to say, okay, sometimes we all don't have access to Thando, we all don't have access to Tatenda, and in as much as maybe we can have access to them, imagine 100 people doing CTA, each and everyone asking. At least if we have it recorded and we can always refer, is that way it's easy. So feel free to ask as many questions as you guys can. Because even sometimes someone asks me a question and the next time I'm responding, they've already written the exam. So, also this Thando, I think you need to clarify on those pronouncements that you were saying, the psycha pronouncement. So there's a question about that.
Okay, so the psycha pronouncements, I also discovered them when I was now preparing for ITC. So given that like our syllabus, the syllabus maybe for far audit is quite long, sometimes they give you guidance on what you're supposed to read when you're preparing for ITC. For example, this year for audit, they say that they're going to examine on agreed upon procedures. And then they also had, I think it was ISO 300. So they just selected a few topics that they were going to focus on. And then so I downloaded those pronouncements and prepared for my ITC, especially for audit using those. And then when ITC came, like there was a question on agreed upon procedures. There was a question on due diligence. So it's just a guidance on some of the key topics that you need to read, and they're likely to be examined in your ITC.
Okay, thank you so much. And all those who are going to write their CTA this year, we are praying that come January, everyone is going to write ITC. So thanks a lot, Thando, for that. So guys, let me just share my small experience, but I feel like it's very outdated, but it's still the same. So personally, I did my CTA in July 2019. That's like 5 years ago, and I'm realizing I'm really growing very old. And then so I passed my CTA, but it was not easy. So it wasn't really easy. I'll also share some tips. And then I joined Deloitte and Touch, and then I did my ITC in 2020. And then I passed my ITC, passed my APC. So basically, when I did my CTA, it was hard, guys. I hear the people, they actually saying their lowest mark was 35. Myself, my lowest mark was 32, and I never passed math up until the last final exams where I got math 50. So I just got a 50 in math when I passed CTA back then. So I'm actually seeing that people now are passing and people really have some tips. And I think when I look at it, one of the things that I struggled a lot was I didn't have anyone to share their experience with me. So I was just clueless and I was just all over and I was just doing what I thought I was doing. But when I look at it, I think I try to put in like more hours, studying, like just being disciplined. In the morning, I would go to CAA and try to be there, try to study. In the evening, I was also there because I was so confused, guys. I was even sleeping at CAA with my friends, trying to cover up as much work as I can, because I didn't have anyone to share the tips with you. Like these guys, they are sharing the tips with you. And I noticed at the end of the day, it was me also trying to do my assessment. I think I'll also then share I couldn't locate it, but I had my timetable that I always share with people, where that timetable, it was like per topic, which is something similar to what these other guys were saying. So I would say, okay, this is the list of the topics that we're doing for FINAC, and I would tick to say, you know what, I'm comfortable with IS2, I'm comfortable with IS8, I'm comfortable with this. And then whenever I say I'm comfortable, I actually stop and ask myself, like, Brenda, what are you saying? What is it that you are saying you are comfortable with? Tell me what you know. Like, there were those conversations, like, with myself. And then sometimes I'll actually see that, you know what, I'm saying I'm comfortable, but then I'm not. And then whenever I say, maybe I see that I don't have a knowledge gap, I would go and try and attempt a question. So that question would then review to me to say, you know what, you were lying to yourself when I'm trying to then attempt the question. But at the end of the day, I can say it was all God, and putting in additional hours and trying to just make ends meet and trying to do my assessment on my own, because even getting that 50 in math, it wasn't easy, because I had to sit down to say what's really going on with math. And that's when I realized, one, I actually had a lot of knowledge gap. So I didn't know how to get easy marks as well. I wasn't also understanding the scenarios and questions. I used to sort of like jump into conclusion, and then I will answer things going this way, but then the one thing's going this way. And also I noticed I was very comfortable with calculations. Whenever they give questions which are qualitative, I then used to struggle. So in conclusion, I can say I failed a lot. At some point, I even decided to leave CTA and then started working, because I was so scared that I wasn't going to make it. And then after my friends convincing me, I went back again to CTA, and then I ended up like finishing CTA, passing, going. But it was never easy. But when I look at it now, where I am right now, like I was telling people, like I feel like I have 36 hours in a day, because I now have a lot of time. So like what Thando said, to say, you guys just make sure you put in the hours. After the exams, it will be gone, guys, and you have all the time. And you will actually be surprised that, you know, there's even more time. Like, yeah. So if you have any other questions, you can always like send through the questions, and then we can always then find some people maybe who can also help you in terms of those questions. But it's really worth it, and it's easy to pass, guys, as long as you put in the hours, as long as you're honest with yourself, as long as you're studying smart, as long as you're learning the exam technique, as long as you learn how to manage your time, it's very, very possible. Otherwise, thank you.